Dobrodošli na današnjem večeru, ki smo ga poimenovali Osvobajanje Palestine, pogovor z palestinskim pisateljem, režiserjem in dramaturgom Ahmedom Masoudom, ki ga z veseljem danes pozdravljamo med nami. Dogodek organizira Gibanje za pravice Palestincev, založba Sophia in pekarna Magdalenske mreže s podporo kulturne četrti Minoriti. Da pa ne pozabim, bom samo povedala, da prevod drame izdelovalka Mrtvaških prtov najdete v zadnji številki revije Borec, založbe Sophia, ki bo tudi po dogodku na voljo tam za nakup. Je pa celotna številka posvečena Palestini, so politični eseji, drama in pa poezija, tako da zelo priporočam. Okay, so very welcome, Ahmed. We are honored to have you here in Maribor after your stay in Ljubljana and Trieste.
Thank you.
Very welcome. And first, just let me introduce you for our Maribor audience. So Ahmed is an acclaimed Palestinian writer and director from Jabalia, Gaza. Since 2002, he's living in London. He holds a PhD in British literature, and some of his works include The Shroud Maker, which we have now just heard some pieces of, Vanished, Come What May, and his theater and radio drama credits include Application 39, Camouflage, The Shroud Maker, Vala, Loyalty, and Escape from Gaza. He has also founded a theater and dance group, Al Zaytuna, which was one of the leading dance groups in Europe to allow Western audiences to experience Palestinian culture through theater, dance, and music. So maybe let's just continue with The Shroud Maker.
Sure.
Because The Shroud Maker resonates more than ever, I think. The grief is immeasurable and devastating. And you yourself, as every Palestinian, are now deeply marked by the Israeli genocide and all the loss and sadness that it has been causing. Your brother has been killed in January in Gaza. Members of your family are still in Jabalia, in the north of Gaza, which Israel in the past 12 days, has been relentlessly bombing. So how has the story of The Shroud Maker been accompanying you in the last year?
Very good question. Well, firstly, I just want to start by first thanking the amazing actors for this amazing performance. I didn't understand anything, but I could follow the story, of course, because I wrote it. But it's an incredible, moving performance, so thank you so much for honoring the words and the story as well. And thank you also, thank you for coming here and listening to us and being part of this. This is, by being here, this is an act of solidarity and an act of coming together, so I really appreciate it that you've given up your evening to be with us and to listen to our stories as well. I know it's hard because with all the news and all the stuff that's going on, sometimes it's easier to just shut yourself away and not engage, but by being here, you've already done an act of resistance itself, so thank you. And also thank you to this beautiful venue, like this is just incredible. I love being here, I don't think I want to leave, I want to stay here. So thank you for hosting us and all the stuff in there. Just back to your questions around the Shroud Maker. I mean, it resonates so much because the sense of inhumanity of what's happening is continuing. It has been going for decades and decades. It has been going on since 1948 and hasn't stopped until now. It increased, it accelerated in the last year or so, but this suffering has continued since then. And that is really the character of Hajja Sa'ad. She is Palestine, and Palestine is her. She is telling the story of a nation and a country through her own eyes and through her own experience in there. Day one of Palestinian suffering was not the 7th of October. It was not, you know. I grew up in Gaza as a refugee. I was without food for a long time. I had to beg for food. I had to queue for on feeding centers, etc. I mean, where do I stop? I can tell you so many other stories in there. Yes, in the last year things have accelerated, but they are the pinnacle or the iceberg of all the suffering that's been going for a long time. The play starts with the Israelis giving this woman a phone call to warn her to leave the building or the house. And then, as you have figured out, I don't know if you have because it's in Slovenian, so I don't know, but it turns out that this is her grandson that he's trying to warn her. This luxury, even, that they used to warn us, they used to give us 3 minutes to evacuate the house before bombing it. There were 2 types of warning. One was a phone call like this, the other was called a tapping message. So they used to bomb the roof first so you can leave. That luxury has disappeared completely. Now they don't warn, now they just bomb entire neighborhoods with people and their families and their kids and everybody, and entire neighborhoods by the hundreds. Today, as you may have seen in the news, they bombed a UN school, killing 24 people in there, and to my horror, as I was coming here in the car with the amazing actors, I saw my brother-in-law on one of the clips in the hospital, fanning on somebody, on a kid, lying on the floor. And I couldn't see, because the clip was so fast, and I couldn't see the kid's face on the floor, and I thought it was my nephew. And you can imagine, like, my heart just dropped completely. And then I really felt sick, like literally I was sick in the car completely. So I had to go and lie down when I arrived here, just to kind of calm myself down. It turned out not to be my nephew. But that doesn't make it alright, like it does not, you know, it's not my pain, it's somebody else's pain. But that horror of seeing it. So they don't do this anymore in terms of calling and stuff, but the play is still important because it brings it back to the core issue of that suffering, of where it started, where that story of a whole nation, and that things continue to go worse and worse and worse. At the same time, the character of Hazza Saad, she's so dignified, and she's always wanting and insisting on life as much as possible. And that is the story of the Palestinians.
Yeah, we will go back to the context a little bit later. Now, just because you mentioned Gaza and a little bit of how you lived when you were a child or a young person, now we are used to, or we have been used to seeing Gaza as a place of, devastation and now horror and just unimaginable grief. But on the other hand, Gaza is a city next to the Mediterranean Sea. It has a specific architecture, it has a specific Mediterranean atmosphere. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of growing up there from the point of view of the city, the community, but on the other side also from the point of view of occupation, apartheid, and all the mechanisms of survival that you...
Sure. It's a very difficult question to answer very briefly, so I don't know how much time you have. I will start with, go back to a little bit back in history, thousands of years ago. There was a guy that tried to invade Palestine. He was Greek, and his name was Alexander the Great. And he got to Gaza, and he couldn't get into Gaza. He besieged Gaza, even worse than right now, okay? And eventually he killed so many people, and he got into Gaza, went into Gaza, really victorious. And as he gets to the middle of Gaza City, a Gazan man gets an arrow and shoots him, and it goes over his face and injures his face. Alexander the Great gets really angry and orders the destruction of the city completely, and it gets destroyed, the men killed, the women deported. And Alexander the Great decides to leave Gaza because it's a shit place and he doesn't want to. He was injured. How dare these Gazans basically resist? And he keeps walking and walking with his troops. He gets to the Sinai and he goes in the Mediterranean and he stops somewhere and he feels so bad because he missed Gaza. He heard so much about Gaza and he actually liked it when he was besieging it. So he orders building a replica of that city, which is now known as Alexandria. So if you go to Alexandria, or if you have been, you will know what Gaza looks like because it's a replica of Gaza City. This is just a little story here I wanted to tell you. But throughout the history, Gaza And people in there, they've always been very dignified, they've always been very proud. It's a cross-culture place where Africa and Asia meet. It's like the rest of Palestine. It's actually very different from Palestine in one thing, which is food. We eat a lot of chili in there, so our food is very, very spicy. We eat a lot. My mom used to make me chili sandwiches to school, right? And honestly, and you know when we were kids, if we swore or said bad words, my mum used to put chilies in our mouths, you know? So I used to swear more because I like chili. So I'm just trying to give you an idea of the people and the culture. They're just they've got an amazing sense of humor, incredibly generous and kind, and if you go there, they're so hospitable and so incredible as well. In Islam, there are various scholars that shaped what is modern Islam right now. One of them is called Imam Shafi'i. He is from Gaza, from Palestine, and he's the coolest dude ever because basically nothing is haram to him. Everything is allowed, you know. Drinking is okay, everything is okay. Basically what he said, if you read the Quran, find the easiest thing and follow it. It's up to you, you know. This is our mentality. We love life so much. We've had so many great poets and writers. Ahmed Matar was from Gaza. He wrote beautiful poetry. And many others as well who are from Gaza. My own childhood growing up in there, I am not from Gaza. My grandfather was from a village called Deir Sneid, which is between Jerusalem and Gaza. That village, my grandfather was very rich. He owned a lot of land, like a lot of Palestinians, a house. That was all taken from him, and he was kicked out in 1948, like Hajj Saad. And he ended up in Gaza as a refugee and lived poor all of his life in a tent. And as a result, I grew up poor as well. I mentioned earlier, every Wednesday, as part of my childhood, we used to go and queue in a feeding center for the UN. We used to get beaten up by the soldiers. We used to get, arrested all the time. I talk a lot about this in my first novel, Vanished. If you happen to read it, it kind of gives a picture of that childhood and growing up. But throughout all of this, we've tried to build Gaza to be as beautiful as possible, with beautiful cafes and restaurants and alleys and beachfront and amazing food and all of that. But yet, unfortunately, every single time we build it, it gets destroyed. One final thing to mention here, that the official symbol of Gaza City, is the phoenix. Phoenix is the official symbol because Gaza has been destroyed 6 times. This is the 7th time throughout history, and every time it gets rebuilt, and I'm hoping that it will be rebuilt soon.
Now, as you mentioned already, the Palestinians are facing complete dehumanization of Palestinian life. There is relentless bombing, sniper shots, people being tortured in prisons, Israeli prisons, not only now, but for decades. Now there are people starving, left without medicine, doctors and journalists deliberately killed, schools, universities, hospitals deliberately destroyed. And everything is done with the approval of the Western governments. So my question is specifically, after the very clear advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice from the 19th of July this year, that all the settlements, Israeli settlements in occupied Palestinian territories are illegal, that they should be stopped immediately, that new settlements have to be stopped, that all the member states of the United Nations should stop being complicit in Israeli illegal actions. However, nothing is being done. We are, witnessing words, states may be recognizing Palestine as a country, but that doesn't really mean anything. And we keep on listening about the two-state solution, although this is not possible anymore. So how do Palestinian people comprehend how the West is treating them, and how do they understand complicity of the West in the Israeli genocide? And on the other hand, how do they feel when mostly global South is showing solidarity with Palestine? I'm talking about South Africa, Nicaragua, Chile, Mexico, Libya, also Spain now.
A good question. Recently there was a journalist that was killed in Gibanjem, and as he was shot, his friend was filming, and he was shouting at him, saying, "Why are you filming? Why are you doing your journalist work? Who for? Why? Why are you doing it? Because nobody cares." It was a poignant message that he was trying to say to his friend, because his friend was shot and he died after from his wounds. And it was very sad to actually hear that, like live on a news report, in a sense, saying like, this is just bullshit. You were trying to give the message, but nobody's listening, nobody's doing anything. I think I've met so many people recently, not just from Palestine, Palestinians, but also around the world, who've actually suddenly woken up to the idea that this international kind of law does not really exist. You know, it's kind of a complete fake scenario that is designed to protect certain people, designed for white colonial European settlers rather than anything else. And that is a reality check that a lot of people are just waking up to and kind of processing now. I think it's going to take some time to change, because the ICJ from now on, I think, would be quite pointless, really, because nobody's going to follow it at all, nobody's going to believe in it. And also the ICC, in a way, or even the UN itself. You know, Israel a few days ago bombed the UNIFIL forces in Lebanon. I mean, the impunity that these guys have is incredible, to actually go to the UN, supposedly the police of the world, and bomb them. And it's okay, nobody's done anything and nobody's allowed to do anything at all. I think for Palestinians in there, they're just they're seeing all of this, that they're incredibly desperate, that something is going to change in the world, and they don't believe that this is just Israel itself. They're beginning to see that the US is a big player in what's happening in there. So they're quite hopeless from that perspective. Yes, they are looking at the global south more, and in terms of actions, some people are thinking maybe Iran will help more, like more militarily, but that is just also crazy, because we don't want any more wars. A lot of people don't want Iran to bomb, they just want this to end, and that's it once and for all. I think it's what is happening right now is not just bad for us Palestinians, but actually for the rest of humanity, for the rest of the world as well, because it is going to create a different world order, in a sense. It's going to create a different world structure and beliefs and systems, etc. I mean, the whole sort of terrorism thing started in 2000, you know, after the US bombed, you know, all these places. So violence creates violence, and things happen, and, you know, all of our lives will be impacted. So ending the genocide there is not just good for Palestinians, but I think for everybody. Where this help is going to come from, I don't think it's from Global South or anybody. I think it is from the people. I think from people like yourself. Remember South Africa with the apartheid regime, it didn't change from Global South or anybody or from governments. It was the people who boycotted, who put pressure on their governments, and then suddenly there was that switch and it fell. And it's the same thing. Yes, illegal settlements in the West Bank, they are illegal, governments are still dealing with them, but you have a choice not to buy their products, you have a choice to boycott them. And if we all do that, and encourage our friends, and talk to them, and educate our friends and family, and even if we change one person to say, well, don't buy those dates from an Israeli settlement because it's an illegal settlement, it's built on Palestinian blood, there is an alternative. Look for the alternative. And in fact, you don't need that. And that goes to a lot of sectors, including culture, including academia, including military industry, so many things. But we need to change the mentality and the culture of people around us. And I think that is all of our responsibility. And I hope that you can continue to do that. I can never now bring myself to even drink Coca-Cola because of their complicity with what is going on. It's a shit drink anyway, why would I want to drink it, you know? Okay, get some people liking it, but just find an alternative, you know? These things are important. Don't be complicit in the bloodshed that is happening in there.
Just one thing came to my mind. Recently, we hosted here in Maribor also a Palestinian director and animator, Ahmed Saleh. And he has been living between Jordan and Germany, but this year he decided to completely leave Germany because he can't bear to live there anymore. But he was telling us a story that every time when he was speaking with the person from the West, from Germany or otherwise, when they asked him about Palestine, when he started to explain, they always said, "Oh, this is so complicated, let's stop." And then he said, "Okay, if you think this is complicated, I will start to make like short stop motion animations, 2-3 minutes long, to explain like excerpts of everyday Palestinian life." And then he definitely did this, and then people said, "Okay, we are slowly starting to understand this." And however, then he said, because these stop motion animations were funded by EU money, he was then, I'm getting founded by the EU because in my stories I never mentioned Palestine, because I'm a Palestinian artist and it's completely understandable to me that I'm speaking about Palestine. But because he never mentioned Palestine, you know, it was interpreted that this is a refugee story, which is very sad, and we are all very sad because of the wars and refugees. However, you know, he said, if I was directly mentioned this is a Palestinian person telling a Palestinian experience, it would never get funded.
Yeah, I mean, that is the case, unfortunately. This is the problem. This is what has allowed Israel to carry out their genocide. It's the fact that they've, most Western governments and media, they've never allowed us the voice. Like, I've been living in London for the last 20 years or so. I go back to Gaza normally twice a year, or at least once a year. I was there last May, and I was going to go in October, which I didn't. But I've been writing, doing theatre in London, in the UK, and it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy at all, just because I am Palestinian, just because of who I am and my nationality and all of these things, and the subject matter that I choose to talk about. I've had plays cancelled from theatres, I've had funding applications rejected, I've had books denied from publishers. My last book, like, I had so much good feedback from publishers, you know, big publishers, but then they say, sorry, we can't publish it. And they said, but why? And they said, well, it doesn't fit our editorial line. I'm like, what? Why? So we have to find an alternative, etc. And I think with Ahmed and his animation sort of films, it's the same thing. So he's found his alternative in the sense that he doesn't have to mention Palestine, but it's kind of implied. And like for me, I always try to find my way around it and navigate around it. So I have to continue to write, I have to publish, I have to tell my story without, you know, adhering to this pressure from them and just giving up, because if I give up, nobody else will be able to tell the story. I have the advantage of speaking English, writing in English. I have a voice, it's the voice of my people, my sisters, my family, my mom, my parents, you know, and I feel I have that responsibility and that weight on my shoulders to tell that story and not be kind of stopped by their pressure and what they want us to. Unfortunately, they want to portray us all as these kind of hooligans, militarized society. We're all Hamas, we're all meant to die. And even if we're not Hamas, it's okay to kill civilians, as the German foreign minister said a couple of days ago. I don't know if you followed that, but she literally said it's okay to kill civilians in Gaza. And I can't believe that she's still there doing her job, having said that civilians should be killed, you know? I mean, what kind of sick mentality that is? What kind of sick mentality that somebody can think like that? But that didn't just happen now in the last year. That's been decades and decades of dehumanizing Palestinians to an extent where, you know, we are seen as the other, as the subhuman, you know? We don't deserve our freedom and our rights in there. And that's got to change. And the only way to change is for us artists to continue to write and work and produce work, but also for you to support that and support the voices from Palestine as much as possible by, you know, reading our stories, buying our books, spreading them, sharing them. I'm not promoting my work in here. I don't have books, by the way, it's just so you know. But honestly, it's just like connecting with Palestinians, sharing their voices, even if it's just on social media. Try to kind of connect to somebody, follow them, friend them, have a conversation with them. They're desperate to talk to the outside world. Share their stories as much as possible. You can do that very easily. And if you come across a writer, an artist, share their work, because everybody else is trying to deny us this platform.
Yeah, when you said that your radio drama was cancelled, this happened in Germany, right? This year? Yeah, because of the Olympic Games, yeah?
Yes, yeah. So I wrote this play a while ago, and it was set in the future, in 2048, so 100 years since the Nakba. And it was a piss day. I like to write comedy. And it was about these two guys who submitted an application for the IOC, the International Olympic Committee. They hacked the website and submitted an application on behalf of Gaza to host the Olympics. And the application was so good because they copied the French application and they win the Olympics, the right to the Olympics. And then they kind of, Gaza is like now divided, run by robots, which is like now, I didn't realize I was so prophetic, to be honest with you. And then they go like, shit, okay, so we have to host the Olympics, how do we do it? So they build more tunnels and all of these things. So it played at WDR in Germany for like a couple of Olympics. And it was great, they paid me the fee, sent the check, great. So they would write to me and say, just so you know, your play is going to be on air. In fact, it was very popular when it was first aired. It became the 6th downloaded podcast for about 12 weeks in Germany. I was quite famous in Germany for a bit. At this Olympics, they didn't, the one in Paris in the summer, they didn't play. Well, I wrote to them and I said, hello, you know, where's my check? I've got family under genocide in there, I want to support them. And they were like, oh, we didn't play it this time. And I was like, but why? And they said, oh, it's not the right political climate. I was like, now, not the right political climate, now, how do you think, you know? But basically it was censorship, it was basically you're not allowed. And actually the play is published in a book as a short story called Palestine Plus 100. It's lightweight, it's quite hopeful, it's, towards the end, there is kind of peace, I imagine peace in it as well, but you'll have to read the story to know the ending.
Now that we've been speaking about the censorship, there is probably also a lot of self-censorship of the artists, either Palestinian artists or pro-Palestinian artists regarding the genocide that is going on right now, or even before the occupation and the apartheid. And now just recently, I would like to quote part of Arundhati Roy's speech. So Arundhati Roy, the incredible, excellent Indian author and activist, I think last week she received the British PEN Harold Pinter Award, and part of this speech was, and I'll read from my paper, Arundhati says, so this is the part in my speech where I'm expected to equivocate to protect myself, my neutrality, my intellectual standing. This is the part where I am meant to lapse into moral equivalence and condemn Hamas, the other militant groups in Gaza, and their ally Hezbollah in Lebanon for killing civilians and taking people hostage, and to condemn the people of Gaza who celebrated the Hamas attack. Once that is done, it all becomes easy, doesn't it? Ah well, everybody is terrible, what can one do? Let's go shopping instead. I refuse to play the condemnation game. Let me make myself clear. I do not tell oppressed people how to resist their oppression or who their allies should be. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it's been quite sickening, to be honest, in terms of, like I said, trying to put us into one pot, as in this is who we are, Hamas supporters, celebrators, you know, and if you want to be accepted, you have to condemn Hamas, in a sense, as if, you know, I'm a spokesperson for the entire Hamas military wing, the Qassam brigades or something. So come on, guys. I made a conscious decision not to appear on media, British media at all. So I've been doing events like this because I like it. I like to connect to people and speak to people, but not the media, because this is what they want. They want us to start with this question: do you condemn Hamas? And it's quite insulting, to be honest with you, because you're inviting, and a lot of my friends went on the BBC to speak, because of course it is important to have a platform and a voice, etc. But that is not what they're doing. They're not giving you a platform or a voice. They're actually trying to put you into a box, because you're either going to condemn, and if you do, and some have, then you're quoted that even Palestinians are being, you know, condemning Hamas and stuff. But they're not really addressing the issue. Or they want you to be a victim, so tell us how much your family are suffering. I'm like, so the Channel 4 got in touch with me. Channel 4 is a big TV station in the UK. And they said, oh, come and tell us about your family suffering. And I was like, no, why? And they said, we need to know how people are suffering. I said, yeah, you've got a point. How about you speak to my sister in Gibanjem? And they were like, well, we can't. I said, no, you can. I can, what do you want? And they said, oh, we can't, call her. And I said, I'll get her to film a video, and she will send it. It might take a day or two because she doesn't have internet connection or electricity or something, but it's her voice from there. You don't have to do the report now. You can wait 2 days. And they did that. And it was very funny because my sister, who lives in Gibanjem, has got the best sense of humor in the world, right? Best sense of humor. She's always laughing. Even today, I spoke to her today, finally, message today, and about the stress and my nephew and stuff like that. And she was still laughing about it. So they were talking to her about the evacuation thing, and she said that she doesn't want to go because there's nowhere safe. She can't leave Gibanjem, etc. And in the end, she's joking, right? And she said, well, if the Israelis offer me a chalet by the beach with a swimming pool, of course, I would consider it and I would leave Gibanjem. Now, for me, this is what they should have played. They cut this off. That part, they cut it off from the interview. And I thought, my God, this shows humanity. This shows a sense of humor and somebody who's normal is of course, if you offer anybody a chalet by the beach with a swimming pool, would leave a refugee camp. But it's just the intention. They focused on her suffering, yes, good, her voice. But even within that, they made a conscious decision that 1 second, that one sentence, that could have changed how people see Palestinians completely. They've made a conscious decision to edit it. And I think because of this censorship, we are now, as Palestinians, we are censoring ourselves. There's self-censoring as well. Right now, we're going through massive atrocities. We're going through something that beyond any imagination, beyond anybody can imagine. Of course, there are examples in history similar to what is happening right now, whether here in Europe or in Africa or elsewhere. I'm in no way belittling the kind of importance and the suffering of people around the world, but this is quite unique. This is you're imprisoning 2.3 million people and you're constantly bombarding them, taking the shit out of them. This is slightly unique because in most of other conflicts, people have a way of escaping. So what we're going through at the moment is even hard for us to comprehend. So, for example, if I am writing about resistance and my right to resist, a lot of my Palestinian friends will also criticize me and say, what are you talking about? We're suffering, we don't want to resist. If you talk about not resisting and kind of giving up and that's it, a lot of other Palestinians write it. So we're going through this conflict at the moment of really not understanding what's going on. It's going to take a while. And this is why a lot of writers and artists have kind of toned down on their work and they're not producing a lot of work at the moment. I myself have turned into poetry, so I've been writing a lot of poetry recently. In fact, I wrote one on the way here, and it also reflects this sense of loss and this sense of kind of not knowing where things are going. It will take a time for the shock to be absorbed and to kind of rebound and be able to express that what we want. But at the moment, a lot of us are self-censoring, including myself in a way, because I have to be sensitive to everybody involved in there, including my own family as well.
If you go back to the media and the context from the beginning of our conversation, so yeah, the context from the media is missing almost completely. So everything began on the 7th of October. They are mostly still writing about Israeli-Hamas war, although there is Israeli genocide over Palestinian people. They are still writing that Hamas is a terrorist organization. However, if they would translate the words that compose this acronym Hamas, it would be Islamic Resistance Movement. But if they would write this, they would have to ask themselves, resistance against whom?
Against what?
And against what, yeah. So how do you see that? Would you say that even media is complicit in the genocide? We know that the former UN senior official and international lawyer, Craig Mukiber, he's now doing research how to sue the big media of complicity in genocide.
Yeah, I mean, that was obvious from day one on the BBC. Sorry. So on the 7th of October, and if you remember it, I woke up thinking, shit, this is bad, this is really bad, this is Gaza's gone, that's it. I checked Al Jazeera, and Al Jazeera was showing pictures of the Hamas fighters crossing the border through paragliders, right? I don't know if you've seen those images. Nowhere on the BBC or any others have reported that. They only showed the pictures when they bombed the fence and broke through the fence, and the kind of military side of Hamas. And I remember thinking that, my God, within the editorial, the news is still coming, and within the editorial decision, somebody in the BBC decided that those paragliders shouldn't be shown. Don't show those, because it's a prison break story. Everybody loves a good breakout from prison, right? Paragliders or tunnels or people like that, right? So there will be good guys. If you show that, there will be good guys. And I just wondered about that person who made that decision. So Al Jazeera was showing the paragliders non-stop. The BBC, there was no mention of it, right? This is before we even knew that there were Israeli casualties. The news is just literally coming. And that's when I knew that the media is going to fuck us up. And I'm sorry to use this word, but I knew that this is what's going to happen. And then from then on, there was the constant sort of justification for the killing and everything. Yeah, I mean, it was atrocious, and there's a lot of research around it and how complicit they were. The BBC was CNN, Fox News, just disgusting and vile, absolutely vile in the way that they've allowed Israeli officials to call us human animals, they've allowed Israeli politicians to call for genocide openly, they've allowed them to say we've thrown a nuclear bomb on us, and that was okay, nobody was challenged, and that allowed Israel to do whatever they wanted to do. Today it's 1 year since Al Ahli hospital was bombed in Gaza. That was the beginning of the genocide, if you remember, when 500 people were killed in a hospital in Gaza City. This time, exactly last year, on this day, 500 people were bombed where they were sheltered in a hospital, yet the media did not challenge the Israelis at all. The media took the Israeli story, right, and said that it was a Hamas-fired rocket that failed and all of these things, and did not question it at all. And by doing that, they knew that they were saying to the Israelis, go on then, we're going to cover your back, basically, that's what it was. Go on then, we'll do it, don't worry. You do what you like, carry on, we'll do what you like. Then the constant videos that were coming out of the Israeli army, if you remember, when they went to the hospital, the Indonesian hospital in Gibanjem, and found that calendar, and claimed to be his Hamas rota or whatever. It was literally, a calendar. Then they went into Al-Shifa hospital, and you saw what they did in there. And then they take you with the BBC is there, and they're filming. Actually, the BBC got to the Al-Shifa hospital to a generator in the ground, and it's okay. It's not challenged, and that's why they're part of this genocide. And that is why I decided to boycott them. How could I be on their platform? How could I actually go and share that platform, knowing that they're intentionally doing this? When the killing continued, and now they're they're trying to kind of say, oh, well, no, we've been impartial, we've had Palestinians on our shows, and I'm like, no, you haven't, I think there needs to be a lot of change in there, but just imagine, despite all of this, right, despite all of that Western kind of government support and the media and social media, by the way, because Meta has been kind of really oppressive with us. There's the algorithm. If you mention Palestine or Gaza, your posts don't get many likes or don't be shown. Yet demonstrations have been so big around the world, and yet students have been camping at universities in the US and the UK. Yet some governments, like the Slovenian government, and it's a step, don't underestimate it, it's good, and it's thanks to you that they've done that. I don't think they came in to recognize Palestine out of their own willingness, but it's thanks to you they've done that. Spain has been amazing. There's an example there where we can follow. Belgium has been amazing. Norway has been amazing. So there's a lot more to do. So imagine if we didn't have that censorship, if we didn't have that Western media in our case, where we would be right now, and how many lives would have been saved. So this is why I think there's still a lot to be done. They want you to feel it's hopeless and there's nothing that you can do. They want you to feel that all words have been lost. No, they bloody haven't. There's more words to say because you still have a relationship with Israel right now. Your ambassador is in Israel right now. So there are words to be said about that. So don't tell me there are no words to say.
Yeah, you also now mentioned governments in relation to civil society and the difference between how they act. So I know you've been speaking before the UK elections a little bit about voting tactically. How do you deal with this when people tell you that you have to vote tactically? Now, you know, the US elections are coming up. There is this big discussion that is influencing everyone. We had EU Parliament elections this year. What do you say?
Well, I would say it's just stupid. I think you should really vote for what you believe in. And if you believe genocide shouldn't happen, then you shouldn't vote for the candidate that advocates for it and supports it, no matter what the outcome is. I was really like, I really lost hope for a moment, for a period when the UK elections happened, because I really thought there would be some change. And no change happened, because the way capitalist democracy is set up is that you actually have no choice in there. You've got either the bad or the worse, in a sense. I feel like for the US coming up, there are independents, they can vote for independence, and there are those who actually advocated for a ceasefire right from the beginning, so they should go for them. I don't think the outcome of who's going to be my president should determine what I feel about the genocide. I think that is the most important. What is the most important thing for you when you vote? Is it the name of the president, or your ideology, or your political kind of affiliation, or is it human rights and stopping genocides around the world? That's what you need to think about.
Also, civil society has been quite active around the world in helping Palestinians or Palestinian artists to come out of Gaza, or to help them through different platforms. But again, people fleeing from Gaza, or those who are still in Gaza and trying to flee, have to resort to the platforms as GoFundMe, or their relatives who live outside of Gaza, because the governments are doing nothing basically to arrange legal status for Palestinian refugees. But we know this can be done because we have seen it with Ukrainian refugees. And I know your mother and your sister are in Egypt without any legal status. What do you think should be done, or tell us more maybe about what this feels for a person without a legal status?
Yeah, I mean, I managed luckily to get my mum and my sister out from Gaza in April, so about 5 months ago, and about 6 or 8 months into the genocide. She had left Jabalia in December, and there was the pause, if you remember, back in December, and she left Jabalia, went to Khan Yunis, thinking that it's going to be safe. It wasn't, and she stayed in a tent on the beach since then. In January, my brother got killed, unfortunately, in Jabalia, and she didn't know for 3 months, because she was cut off connection. For 3 months between January and April, didn't know her son was killed. I was the first person to speak to her, and I told her not only that her son has been killed, but it was 3 months ago, and that's how difficult it was, because there was no connection whatsoever. And that's the point. I said to her, "You've got to get out. I'm going to get you out. Please, let's get you out." But she's old, tired, so I had to get my sister to be with her, to help her on the way. And she can't just live in Cairo on her own. So we paid $10,000 for the Egyptian government to put her name on the list. And then the day after she left, in April the 12th, they closed the border. So she was very, very lucky, her and my sister. And now she's in Egypt, stateless, with no status whatsoever. If she wants a doctor, she has to go private. I mean, for her, it's kind of for a person like herself, who doesn't need to go to school or university, or doesn't have young kids, it's better than those who left and have young kids. I have friends, they can't take their kids to school, not even private one, right? But for my sister, for example, having a bank account or a mobile contract, they can't do that without citizenship, so they have to rely on somebody, an Egyptian, who can help them with that. Luckily, my aunt had been living in Cairo for like 20 years, so she's got a network, she's supporting, so I'm lucky from that perspective. I'm also lucky that I was able to support her. I didn't use the GoFundMe thing. I have been saving, and I've been, trying to kind of support, and through some friends supported as well. But it's been hard. And I think, yeah, if you can help people that way, then that's great. But I think we do need government support where, like the UK, for example. So now I'm applying, well, I've applied twice for my mum for a unification scheme, family reunion scheme. Rejected. Like, no. But there is no reason for it. I don't know why they would reject it. They've done the same, as you said, to Ukraine. I work for University of the Arts London, and we're putting pressure on the university to allow scholarships for students. I've got three nieces and one nephew. They're all medical students, and they're incredible. They're so good. So my niece is year 4 in medicine. You know, they have studied 7 years or so, but now she's a full qualified doctor in Khan Yunis because they've killed so many medical staff. And the director of the hospital met her once and he said, "Oh, you're a 4-year student? Come on, you can be a doctor." So now she's in the operating theatre, literally helping people. And it shouldn't be like that. She should be continuing to study, and you know. So I'm trying to help her to get out and trying to speak to universities to take her, all of these things. But there isn't official support like for us. It's all me trying to do all of this on my own. In the meantime, I have to send money for my family. I have to support them emotionally, financially, and all of these things. And it's not. I can't do all of this, to be honest.
And it's happening to, you know, 10,000s, hundred thousands of people, these stories. If the media is using the wrong language, do you think that literature uses the language that is more precise and more humane?
Absolutely, yeah. I think literature takes you to a world where you can imagine by yourself. You can create that world and that story. And I've just told you a little story about Alexander the Great. I'm sure a lot of you were just thinking about it. I told you history that you didn't know about, but through a story. And that is the power of literature. It doesn't just tell you things. It takes you there. It carries you and takes you to that place. So my novel, Come What May, is set in Gaza City, and it was published 2 years ago. And now every single street, every single cafe, every mosque, every church that I mentioned there is completely destroyed. It's gone, you know, completely gone. But I still feel lucky that I wrote it, and because it's a record in a way. It's a literary record that somebody later on will look at this footprint and literature and the names and really remember all of those places and honor them in a different way. If the Israelis are successful in their colonial project and they take Gaza and build settlements there, then we have a written record of the names of those places in an artistic way, not just in history books, etc. I bet not many of you here know that Tel Aviv was called Tel Rabia before, which is an Arabic name that means the spring hill, right? And when they took over Palestine, they renamed it as Tel Aviv. I don't know what they're going to call Gibanjem afterwards, but they can't call it anything else because it's in my novel in there. And in that novel, you take it, it's almost taking a bus, and you take that journey, you read it, and you go there. And the best compliment I had about my books is that my books or my stories take you to Gaza and leave you there. And I like that sort of expression in a sense, because Gaza is so hard to get into anyway. Even for me, like when I used to travel to Gaza, and like I said, once or twice a year, it takes minimum 3 days to get from Cairo to Gaza. We're not allowed to have an airport or a port, and we would go through Cairo or drive through the Sinai, through various checkpoints, and yeah, you get there 3 or 5 days later, right? So even for us it's hard to go there. No non-Gazan was allowed to, not even another Palestinian can't go to Gaza. It's an apartheid system. So through the books, through literature, it's an amazing record, it's an amazing journey that you take. And I mean, it's not just Gaza, I like literature when I'm going on holiday or something, is to pick up a book about another place, not the place where I'm living, because I want to imagine it. I made a conscious decision, by the way, to write about Gaza. Everything I write should be set in Gaza. Not about Gaza in a way, but about the people of Gaza and the human stories. So all of them are there. I don't know if you heard of the writer, Zanzibar writer, Abdulrazak Abu Kurna. He won the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago. He's from Zanzibar, and like me, he writes about Zanzibar. All of his stories are in Zanzibar. A few years ago, we were having dinner, and he looked at me and he said, "Listen, don't bother, you're never going to win an award." And I was like, "Why?" And he said, "You and me, nobody cares. We write because we like our place and we like writing, but to win awards, no, forget it. You're not going to get a Hollywood blockbuster contract." I was like, "Great, well, thanks for the inspiration, you know." And then a few years later, he won the Nobel Prize, so I was really happy for him. But I think there is an importance to write about something so local to me, but make it quite international. Talk about people in the society and the complexity. In my novel, Come What May, I talk a lot about class issues, about the issue, you know, the challenges that women face in a conservative society. I mean, I don't talk about Israel that much, really. One day I want to write a novel or a short story where Israel doesn't exist at all. And I imagine that and just see what that looks like, you know. And as a writer, I can do that. I can, you know, imagine everything.
But you write in English, right?
I write in English, yes. Yeah.
Why?
Because I can't write in Arabic. I mean, I studied English literature in Gaza, so I went to university. From high school, I stopped writing in Arabic. And Arabic, I love Arabic. It's such a beautiful, beautiful language. If you don't know it, I recommend it to learn a few language words. I swear to you, I say this a lot, but like my nephews and nieces and my friends on Facebook or social media, if they post about going to the toilets in Arabic, it sounds like a poem. It sounds like a melody, you know, because it's just like so poetic, you know, everything they say. So I don't think I can do it justice. I wrote one play in Arabic, and I sent it to Ashtar Theatre in Palestine, a big theatre company in Palestine. And Iman Aoun, who's a good friend of mine, respects my work, she replied and she said, "Ahmed, you're a great writer, but stick to English, please." I was like, okay, I got the message, you know. I also find English gives me a little bit of objectivity when I'm discussing Palestine, because I'm constantly choosing the right word. I don't get too obsessed and emotional about it in a sense. I have to research the word, choose the word, and edit it, and all of these things. I was saying yesterday, I don't know, in Ljubljana, but that section in the Shroud Maker towards the end, when she's searching for her grandson, that took me the longest to write in the play, because it was about language and history and human story, three things together. And every time I wrote, it turned out to be like a documentary or a paper or an article. In 1994, Oslo happened. Then Rabin got shot, and it didn't work. But with English, you have that ability to create structures and sentences quite easily by chopping and chopping and chopping. You take things out, and then suddenly you've got this tune almost coming out. And I quite like it because it's a flexible language in a sense. It's not as rigid as other languages like Arabic. Because it's poetic and beautiful, it can be quite rigid from that perspective. Or at least I don't know how to make it that way because I'm not written in Arabic in there. But yeah, I do enjoy writing in English. Yeah, I mean, I did a PhD in English, so I'm hoping that I can write in English.
Also, in one of your recent interviews, you said there is an Arab saying, life is so claustrophobic without the vastness of hope.
That is absolutely true. It is an interesting one. So a lot of poets use that saying. You've got to hang to hope, otherwise, how can you live? You know. Again, I mentioned previously that at the moment in Gaza, a lot of people talk about the casualties of children, women, elderly, injured, sick. All correct, you know, to focus on those groups. There's one group that not many people talk about, which is young men between the age of 18 to 40. Not much kind of talked about it. They're the highest casualty, by the way. And more recently, we've got cases of really young, healthy people, no illness whatsoever, dropping dead, heart attacks, whatever, you know, and I know a couple of them myself. And it's, in my mind, they've lost hope. They've lost that thing to hang on to, and they couldn't take it anymore. Life has just pushed them down, and it just became too claustrophobic for them to live. My own brother texted me actually last week to say, sometimes I just want to burn my tent with everybody in it, you know. And imagine just receiving this text from my brother. So, gotta, you know, try and hang on to hope as much as possible. But sometimes hope can be. Our great poet Mahmoud said about us Palestinians, we do what the prisoners do, we cultivate hope. And I think that is a beautiful saying. We need to cultivate hope as much as possible, because for me, as a writer, hope is also an act of resistance, because they want you to be hopeless, and they want you to feel like they're defeated. A lot of what Israel is doing, by the way, is revenge. A lot of them. Yes, they have a colonial project. We know that from the beginning. This is not new to Israel. A lot of what they're doing right now in the mass killing is revenge. I'm going to tell you this and just end with it here, but when the 7th of October happened, we talked about the bombing of the fence, right? A lot of people in Jabalia, Betlaia, and Bet Hanun, close to the fence, thousands of people, or hundreds, crossed the border, right? For them, it was an exciting thing, not the killing itself, but actually the ability to cross that fence that has been heavily guarded, and arms, and all of these things. And remember, as I said, most people in Gaza are refugees. They are from there, so I am from there too, right? So there's that opportunity to see that land on the other side, the land of the oppressor, that the one who has been shooting us and besieging us so much. So a lot of them, civilians, just went there, had a look, came back, nothing, like did nothing, participated in absolutely nothing. All of those people, the hundreds or thousands, every single person of them got killed, right? Their houses got bombed. The way the Israelis did it, immediately after the 7th of October, the 8th of October, they looked at the Israeli telecom company. And so all the SIM cards, the Palestinian SIM cards, that switched to the Israeli company. And they got the names, all of them, right? And all of those people got bombed. Not just them, their families, their kids, their neighbors, like neighborhoods, including an area, my street itself. And that's why we're thinking about what is going on? Why are they bombing that, you know? And that's the reason. They just crossed the border, or the fence. It's not even a border. So a lot of what they're doing is an act of revenge. And that revenge is designed to make us hopeless and to make us feel defeated and, you know, that's it, and give up. And I refuse to do that. I think I would like to continue to hope. I'd like to continue to work and write and, yes, think that there is a better future, and to think that this war, hopefully, is going to be the war that's going to end all wars, that peace will follow. Sometimes you have to go to the bottom, and things will get better. Neither us nor the Israelis want to be there. I know for sure, and I know an ordinary Israeli does not want to be in that position either. Or at least I hope so. I would be stupid to think that all Israelis are bad, you know? I refuse to be like them and think that all Palestinians are Hamas and bad and terrorists. I refuse to put myself in that low position in there. So there is hope that this is actually an opportunity for peace. You know, war can create peace. So let's think about that. Let's imagine it. What does that look like? And that's what I would like to focus on as much as possible. I do want to read that poem, if that's okay.
Yeah, I want
because it kind of reflects what I'm saying.
Do you want to read it now or at
the end? I'll do it at the end.
Okay.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now maybe let's turn to our audience. If there are any questions or comments?
I would like to ask, everybody is speaking about the solution of two states. Do you think is it still the real option? Talking about the Palestinian state should be a efficient state, not only a state, proclaimed state, but because of the unlegal settlements, etc. I doubt if the solution of two states is still possible. Mm-hmm. And what do you think about the solution of one state? It should not be nor Palestinian nor Jewish state, but the state of citizen. Is there from the emotional point of view, from Palestinian, is it possible in this generation to live together with Jews in one state? Like black and whites do in South Africa?
I think so, 100%. But just to clarify, the two-state solution was born dead, right? It was never a viable solution in the first place. So, and I think that's the mistake with it, in the sense it was not kind of done properly, implemented properly. There are various reasons for it. One of them is international pressure wasn't enough. The killing of Rabin, I think, made a difference in the end. Let's face it, imagine that Oslo agreement when it was signed, and was then, imagine a scenario where it was implemented immediately within the next 5 years, we wouldn't be here right now, right? So there is at least a space to imagine a potential two-state solution, but it has to be done properly. If Israel withdraws back to the 1967 sort of border, and if they really recognize a Palestinian state, give us our freedom of movement, allow refugees to return, etc. Yes. On the one state, I think Palestinians have already said that many times, that they would accept a one state for both people. That's been on the table for a long time in there. But right now, I think it's going to be very hard, to be honest with you, because there's been a genocide happening. I think I would struggle to see how, like, if you say to people, okay, stop the war right now, live together, they're not going to do that. What I think needs to happen right now is immediate ceasefire to start with, rebuilding of Gaza as much as possible, allowing Palestinians the freedom, dismantle the checkpoints, take the wall out as a start to dismantle the settlements slowly, allow at least 5 to 10 years of normality to happen, and people to start to trust each other, and then move towards a one-state solution where people start to forget a little bit, because right now I think it's impossible for people to just switch immediately. But it is something that definitely we can imagine, we can draw on paper, we can put a structure. This is not the first place that has such a thing. Malaysia has a structure like this where the Chinese community and the Indian community and the Malay have power share kind of structure in there. Not ideal, of course. Northern Ireland is another one that you can think of. There are so many examples around the world that we can think of for Palestine to work as a one-state solution. The problem here is, and that has been throughout the 75 years, is that the powers that be don't believe for a moment that we deserve this. That's the problem. That we are like any colonial state that they went and colonized, like the United States, like Native Americans. It worked there, why can't it work in here? And I think that is the colonial mentality that needs to change. Once that changes, then I think things will be better, and a one-state solution will be possible. I think it will be a one-state solution for sure, and slowly people will come together and build it. I don't think anybody cares about the name, to be honest.
Would you say that all the Arab states, or maybe even Muslim states, are complicit in the genocide, and how?
100%, yeah. I mean, Egypt is just closing the border. I mean, not because they want to, because they have to, because Americans are telling them to, and Israel is bombing it, and instead of insisting in opening the border, they're just like, okay, we're not going to open the border. No, 100% they're complicit. They are, a lot of them are supportive of Israel as well, like the UAE, Egypt, and Jordan as well, They have tried nothing to help Palestinians today. The United Arab Emirates, they sent parachuted aid from the air in Khan Yunis, and 2 people got killed because the parachute didn't work. And then, can you imagine? That's the help that they're getting from them. It must be said that in some cases they are powerless because they are controlled. Like, for example, Egypt is the 3rd recipient of military aid from the US. So if they dare do anything, and they will cut off that aid from them, the whole country will crumble together, the economy will fail, because it's a country run by the military. That's the main thing, So that's to be noted. But then, like, you've got Saudis, got so much power, and like oil, and all of this, and they can put a lot of pressure. But unfortunately, like, what happened was, at the beginning of the events and the genocide, the US just displayed so much power and support by moving like aircraft carriers and, you know, military vessels to the region that scared everybody, basically. And everybody was like, oh shit, you know, better them than us, you know, we don't want to be involved. But they 100% they're complicit. They've allowed Israel, they've normalized with Israel. A few countries have already, like Bahrain, Oman, and UAE. Egypt has normalized a long time ago. There was talk of Saudi normalizing with Israel. I mean, yeah, it's been shit. But the one thing I want to remind people that Arab countries, they're not just this one kind of state in there. We're like, again, like the EU or any other, or South America. Each state has its own interests, its own political affiliation. It's not a homogeneous kind of political entity, as it were. I mean, I wish it was, because it would be a lot easier, but yeah, I hope it will change soon though.
Can you tell us something about there are 20% of population of Israel are of Palestinian origin, Palestinians. Can you tell us something about their situation, the Israeli society, and should they have a power to prevail, not to prevail, but to help to change Israeli society to enable the one-state solution?
Yes, so this, for those who don't know, there's 20% of the Israeli population are Palestinian. Those are the people that in 1948 refused to leave their homes completely. Israel took over, ethnically cleansed 600,000 Palestinians. So the remaining ones, after years and years and years, became part of the new established Israeli state. Those Palestinians then kind of multiplied, because we have a lot of children normally, and they are now 20% of the population. They have some political representation in the Knesset, but they tend to be similar to the black community in the US. They're marginalized, they are considered second-class citizens. They could lose their citizenship at any moment. They often considered an enemy of the state, as it were. If they even right now, if they write on Facebook or social media anything to support Gaza, they'll be in prison immediately. So there's no question about it. Over the last few years, like the black community in the US, Israel sort of encouraged crime. They've actually allowed weapons and guns, so there's a lot of crime within the Palestinian community. So yes, it's 20%, it's an important 20%, but actually they're a lot divided in there, oppressed by the kind of white racist state, and I think they're not quite there yet to make a political influence, because on the same level, the right-wing extreme in Israel is just taken over. I mean, if you look at the right-wing Israeli politicians, just take them out of there, put them in, I don't know, Afghanistan or somewhere. Like, you see that they're actually more extreme than ISIS themselves. I swear, you know. But it's just people can't see it. Like, you know, you have Ben Gvir who goes and advocates for nuclear bombs and killing and raping Palestinians. And I don't know if you saw Ben Gvir, who's the minister in the Israeli government. He was demonstrating against the arrest of the soldiers who raped Palestinians. I mean, imagine that.
I have one question. Many liberal politicians are trying to convince the public that the problem is Netanyahu because he's a far-right politician and all the Israeli government right now. But as we have seen, that even when Israel had left-wing or Labour governments, the apartheid system still existed, and even some laws, apartheid laws, were established under the left-wing governments. So how do you view the Palestinian resistance in the context of class war, class resistance?
Very good question. Yeah, I mean, obviously Netanyahu is part of the problem, but he's not the problem himself, for sure. I think you're absolutely right. They're trying to portray him as he's the issue, and in a way, it's kind of like they were looking for a way out, that if things actually go wrong, they can just remove Netanyahu and say, well, no, he was the baddie and that's it. But like I said, I think there is a lot of sick mentality within the Israeli politicians, within Labour, and Likud and the others as well. But not just the politicians, but unfortunately it's the people as well. I don't know if you've read that now a lot of Israelis go on Israeli boats on the sea to watch Gaza being bombed. I mean, how...
Like a tourist attraction.
It's like a tourist attraction. And you go on a boat, I think they pay money for it as well, or something like a small amount in there. When that story of the rape of Palestinian prisoners came out, and there was footage of it, there was actually footage of it, of a Palestinian prisoner being raped in there. The soldier who did it went on TV, on national TV, right? And people clapping for him. First he went masked on TV and he was shouting, people clapping, and then he became so popular, he became a celebrity, that now he removed his mask and he goes on TV without a mask and all of these things. So it's a reflection of the society of how extreme they are in the first place. Not all of them, I must qualify, like I said, there are some people who are still not happy about this. But I think resistance in this situation is obviously to highlight this, to highlight all sides of the Israeli politics and expose Netanyahu and the others and their agenda and what they're advocating for. I know a lot of people at the moment, they're, for example, documenting what Labid is saying. Labid is the leader of the opposition, who appears to be a bit more moderate and kind of more on the left side and asks for a hostage kind of deal and all of these things. But actually, he's saying a lot of horrible things underneath, and people are documenting this as well. I think resistance against kind of this form of colonialism supported by another colonial power, I think for me it should take all shapes and all forms. I don't have a problem with it at all, but it needs to be calculated. And in a way, yes, I wish Netanyahu wasn't here and with somebody else, because he is hanging on to power. His political life is ended. He is desperate. He looks desperate, you know. And he is the typical dictator that we've all known throughout history. And I wish it was somebody else who doesn't have that, so at least they can be thinking differently, can be influenced by others, can think a bit rationally. So when you have that mixture of extreme politicians, extreme society, and a psychopath leader, then we're fucked, basically. That's the problem.
To me, there seems to be some similarity between the situation in Germany, 30s, 40s, so before and during the Second World War, and Israel and what is happening there. In both cases, people were, or the leaders, told their people, you are above all others, our nation is the greatest. In Israel, we have quite a similar situation, and they believe that even for some thousands of years. Now, in Germany, the Germany had to be, or was devastated, which brought German people to some kind of awakening, which still exists. I don't know, this is to me quite a phenomenon, how they somehow stay for Israel and what they're doing. And on the other side, what is happening in Israel will probably, or if, and how could you imagine a kind of awakening in Israel to recognize what they're doing? This is a genocide.
Yes.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Wrong.
I mean, for me, I try not to draw parallels between both in a way, because I think they're two different, unique things to their own in a way, 100%. And like I said before, so many examples in history, all unique in a sense, you know. So I try to kind of stay away from that, because then we get into a different argument and into a different debate, and then the kind of counter-argument of anti-Semitism starts in, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Israeli atrocity.
And just talk about awakening.
Yes, I mean, I think it will. I mean, unfortunately, some people would argue it's through military resistance and like Hezbollah firing more and Iran attacking, but I don't believe that. I think Israel's awakening will come with peace. That is what it will come with it. Because it's a government and it's a structure that is built on war and thrives on war and violence. The more you give them violence, the more they can expand and like use that as an excuse and go, because they have a colonial mentality and they want to go. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't go to Damascus, by the way. Everybody's talking about Lebanon, but I think they're going to go to Damascus at some point. You know, that it's in their cycle, they want to do it. So I think the awakening will come through peace. And there was a moment, I was in Gaza, I used to date an Israeli girl. She used to come in 1998. I was a waiter in the restaurant. There was hope, you know. I'm not saying it was perfect, I'm not saying, but it can be imagined. Do you know what I mean? And that is the most important thing, is that you can be imagined, and not only you can imagine it, there is an example, and here I am telling you, I used to date an Israeli girl. She broke up with me when the Intifada started in 2000, so, and then again, this is what happens when violence breaks out. I think peace will. My grandfather lived for 110 years in Gaza. And he's seen the Ottomans, the British, the Egyptians, the Israelis ruling Gaza, so he's seen it all. And he said to me once, jokingly, he said, one day the Israelis will call themselves Palestinians and everything will be sorted. And I was like, what? What do you mean? And he said, look, they hate us, but they want to be us. But it's true, like they're fascinated. They're stealing our culture, our land, our food, our dance, our music, everything, you know, because they are fascinated by it, you know, in a sense. I'm not saying it's amazing, I'm just saying that they come from different parts of the world. There is no specific identity, and then you're absorbed with this beautiful thing in front of you, in terms of food, music, culture, and of course you want to take it, you want to claim it as your own. But imagine a peaceful situation where they can do that, we can share food, and we can share music, and we can create things like that. We have an example in history between Jews and Islam in Andalusia. It was the best times that Muslims, Christians, Jews for 300 years worked, collaborated. The different types of music has developed as a result of that, you know, beautiful music and architecture and lots of things. So we can do it, and I'm convinced that we can. I think just peace is the one that is going to give Israel that awakening, that sense of like, okay, but it needs to be long, you know, more than the Oslo years, which was not perfect, of like, literally it was 6 years. And I remember 1994 ended in 2000, like that was the end of it. Because what is happening in the West Bank right now is not a continuation of Oslo. The PA is just has no authority whatsoever. They're just like a police force doing what Israel wants them to do.
I think that the Israelis, they think they are the part of so-called Western civilization in the middle of nowhere, and they are very sensitive on this. What should we do? What should be our pressure? That's my opinion. We should clearly tell him that with such apartheid, with such behavior, they have no place in our institution. They have no right to collaborate with our schools, universities, whatever. Maybe it's not fair to the Israeli people who don't agree. There are such people who don't agree with such politics of Israel, but I think this is the first way, the best way we can make pressure on Israel.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the awakening as well. I agree 100%, and that's part of the awakening, that they will realize that they're so isolated. Yeah, okay, they can have the US and the UK as their supporters, but actually, beyond that, the rest of the world, they're isolated. Eurovision is another one, yeah.
Any more questions from other parts of the call?
You've mentioned colonialism or neo-colonialism a lot of times. What do you think is the role of both sides of the religions involved? If you think there is a religious part to the story, or you think it's completely irrelevant?
I don't think there is a religious part to the story, to be honest with you. I think religion has been used as an excuse and been sort of portrayed as this is a kind of reason, but I don't think so. Like I said, there are lots of examples of history where Jews, Muslim, Christians shared Jerusalem, like just only 100 years ago, if you think about it, you know, under the Ottoman Empire, before the British came, like everybody had that access to their city, you know, and religious freedom, more so than now, right now. So I don't accept it. I think it's a human rights based, and I think it's about the subjugation of one people and not making them equal to the rest of that nation. And then basically, these are the white colonialists that deserve to be the first-class citizens, and then not even second, it's third and fourth class citizens. And I think we've got to break that cycle as much as possible, you know. But right now, it's not. So, like, let's take the example of the West Bank. So the West Bank, there's been no resistance there for a long time. The PA, our president, Mahmoud Abbas, is like the most peaceful person ever, right? He's never advocated for violence at all. He's always talking about non-violent resistance and all of these things. And yet, look what's happening in there. More settlements built, more people killed and arrested, etc., etc., walls erected. So I think it's not about religion at all. It's more around when people have better advantages and priorities to that, access to that land than others.
And also I think because the Israelis and Israeli state, it has, like, all the Israeli people have been raised in a complete paranoia, you know, that they are always the victim. That I think this is the reason also why it's so hard now for them to understand what, you know.
But at the same time, Israel, or Jews, are the chosen people, on the chosen zone. That's why I ask on both sides.
Yeah, but I think
it's much easier to perform a genocide if you think you're chosen one.
Yeah. Israeli are not very religious.
But most Israeli society is not religious.
Yeah.
So.
Not very religious.
But obviously, fear is a kind of basis for the Israel people to silently support whatever their government is doing, because they elected them.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's what happened with the 7th of October, that it was promoted as an existential threat, right? And Netanyahu and the government wanted that message to come across. It was not. And I can tell you I disagree with it, the 7th of October, and I hate killing civilians anywhere, right? But it was an act of resistance. It was not an existential threat at all. But they knew how to kind of refabricate the story and say their own propaganda and their agenda in a sense, you know. But how long for? Today they killed Sinwar, the leader of Hamas. Hamas, you know, what do you want? It's like, you've killed 42,000 people, you've killed the leader of Hezbollah, you've killed the leader of Hamas. What else do you want? You know, you want to kill every child in Gaza? I mean, if I was the Americans now, I would be like, okay, Habibi, Hamas, sit down. You know, it's like, it's got to get to a point where enough is enough. You can't continue to kill people. How many is not enough, you know?
Maya?
Thank you for your critical literature. I don't have a question for you, but rather say that what you mentioned earlier about the voices of people from Palestine is something that we listened to before you came here and sat, because we started to have a small spontaneous circle of people who want to read Palestinian literature, also theories, and this is just a shout out to everyone here that you can come to me and I will give you my email and we can go on doing that. It's self-organized, totally spontaneous circle, and maybe your forum will be.
I would love to really honestly, like, I mean, it's an amazing, it's a book club, like that's an act of resistance itself, you know. It's a book club about Palestinian literature. It's very good literature, by the way. If you want recommendations, I can give you lots of recommendations in there. Talking about acts of resistance, I don't know if you ever read a book called Alone in Berlin. And it's about this guy during Nazi Germany in the 40s. basically, he used to write anti-Nazi messages out of newspaper cutting, put them in a newspaper and drop them in public buildings and all of these things. It's a beautiful book. You should read the book because I'm not explaining it very well. I read it a long time ago. But it drove the Nazis so mad that somebody could dare do this. And it was very hard to find out because it's from newspaper cuttings, like you'd get the letters, you know, and all of these things. And they just chased him and chased him and chased him, but I won't tell you what happens there. But that is a beautiful act of resistance that you can all do, like a sticker, or whatever it is, telling a friend. And it must feel good to you as well, to feel that you're doing something about it. This book club in there, like, is also another act of resistance. Like I said at the beginning, by being here is an act of resistance, because you're not kind of just switching off completely and detaching. So yeah, please do, and I would love to be part of it. Dial me in, or if I'm here, I'll come in, but I can also join online if you want to.
Yeah, share your form, and we'll translate it and read in Slovene or Arabic.
I would love to, yeah. Definitely.
Maybe more questions. If you feel better asking them in Slovene or Arab, please do, and we can translate, or in Arab, you can be translating to us.
Well, I'll translate in English.
No? Okay, well, I think that Ahmed will stay for a while with us. Maybe here.
There is beer available, yes.
Yes, we can go. Yeah, I know. There is a poem waiting for us. Just before Ahmed reads us his poem, I would like to conclude on the note of hope. And again, use the words of Arundhati Roy from her Pen Pinter Award speech. And she said a week ago, as the horror we are witnessing in Gaza and now Lebanon quickly escalates into regional war, its real heroes remain outside the frame. But they fight on because they know that one day, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. It will. Keep your eye on your calendar, not on your clock. That's how the people, not the generals, the people fighting for their liberation measure time.
It's very good. Thank you for sharing. Right, so I wrote this on the plane. It's still unedited and a bit raw, so apologies. And I'm reading it from my phone because I didn't have the pen that the lovely actress gave me as a present today, which was very touching, so thank you. But next time I'll write a violet pen. So it's called Story. And again, it's about reflection of that state of hopelessness, hopefulness, and anything in between. When it's all over, we might not be there, you and I. Our souls have been ruined forever. The memory is stolen from us. The hope crushed under their tanks. The faith in others has faded away. Forgive me, for I have deceived you. Forgive the promises of the revolution as we lied in bed. Please don't ask about my poetry. I have already crossed all the words. Don't ask me about my passionate lovemaking. It has gone. Don't search for me. Don't send me a postcard. Let my soul reincarnate to another revolution or an activist for climate change. If you want, you can collect my books, take them to Jabalia and bury them there, along with the world's humanity. Maybe my words are going to grow, a tree to tell the story of a genocide that happened there, a story that we have all seen. Not a Greek myth, not a heroic tale, just a story about a people that have stood. And in turn, I will remember you. I will miss our kisses. I will miss our revolution in bed or outside. I, in turn, will be free of all of this. Free to love again, free to revolt again, for Jabalia, Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia, for my Gaza and my family. I will rise again, and if my tears have gone, then my blood will boil. My fingers will write again, my heart will hope again. Until then, you may want to tell my story. The story of my sister Hind in Jabalia, the story of my nephew starving in between the heavy tanks, the story of my brother killed while searching for food, the story of my neighborhood erased, the story of my mother displaced, my brother too, my sister too, my people, my country, all being ripped apart. Thank you very much.
Thank you.